Hello there, everyone. I'm Lego Gavin Productions, and this is the Battle of Muunilinst from the 2003 Clone Wars TV show.
So this is quite an expansive layout here. Tell us kind of the story of what's going on.
Yep. So based off the show, essentially I built the speeder bike charge with some custom speeders with Obi-Wan up there in his clone armor. And then just kind of progressing throughout the city, we have a destroyed area up front, leading into more intact buildings, larger buildings, and then the cannon and the giant tower in the back of the build, where the command center is inside with all the munes and everything like that. So,
This tower is certainly one of the best parts of the build. Take us through kind of the architecture and build of this area.
yep. So it's pretty much built on just two straight up sides. So there's front side, the back side, and then some slope pieces around here just to give it a nice angle because it looked a little flat without them. And then this top part here is just the separate command center with lots of slopes and angles. In particular, the back right here, the show, it's very noticeable that it goes, the command center overhangs on the top. So I wanted to make sure to get that angle and everything correct. So
You also added in some great texturing with kind of are those kind of like shell holes in the side?
yep, so I just added some battle damage in because I didn't want to be a plain flat gray wall. So I added in some damage craters, and you can kind of see inside of the build, and just some battle damage below where the clones could fight, kind of like a World War II Stalingrad type feel down below. So, yep.
And as we move away from the tower then into kind of more of these buildings, tell us a little bit about kind of how you represented each of these buildings, some of the architecture.
Yep, so in the show, the buildings are kind of a sand green color mixed with some grays in there, and took some inspiration from different Greek kind of buildings and architecture with the columns, and kind of a lot of the buildings are very tall, so I wanted to make sure to get that scale when you look at it for minifigures. So, yep.
A very unique color palette throughout this build as well. So a lot of that sand green and gray. Did you have a lot of those parts on hand or have to go searching for some of that?
Yep, so just over the years, been collecting lots of sand green elements from the Pick a Brick wall. Never thought I would use them, and then decided to do this and had a bunch on hand, so I was able to use all of those to create the color palette, and I think it works well with light gray. It's a color I hadn't really tried before, and I think they go well together. So.
One thing that stands out is the different roof techniques. You mentioned the columns, which are great, but how did you achieve some of those roofs, especially this one over here,
Yep.
some unique sloping?
Yeah, so that one took a while to figure out, but just kind of some light bluish gray slopes and stacked on top of each other, and then have some hinge plates underneath it and try to get as wide of an angle as I can, and then it's kind of just set on top of the rest of the structure so it overhangs just slightly. So that was something new I hadn't tried before, but I like it. So, yep.
I like the little balconies around some of the buildings as well. You've got the small little details that add that kind of like decoration in.
Yeah, so especially like when rewatching the show a couple times, something that stuck out was all of the walkways and different things that go to and from the different buildings, connecting them, and some awesome shots of droids shooting over balconies, and just lots of interesting opportunities for minifigures, which was something I really wanted to capture and honor the show.
And then moving down to the speeder bikes here, what all do we have happening in this section?
Yep, so this is, when you think of Muunilinst from the show, this is probably the first thing people remember is the speeder bike, so I knew I had to try it out. The clones have a very unique white, matches their armor speeder bikes against the assassin droids, which is kind of the brown design. So took a while designing them, and then very reminiscent of old cavalry charges with their javelins. Wanted to make sure to capture that in the build.
Some unique weaponry there, yeah.
Yeah, especially for Star Wars, they want to go old-fashioned and just go melee combat instead of blasters.
And throughout the rest of the battle, are there any other details you can point out, maybe little scenes here and there in terms of the fighting going on?
Yeah, so essentially I just decided that we'll have the kind of main speeder bike charge up front, and then the clones have pushed down along this right side all the way down here, over here with Fordo and some of his ARC troopers as they kind of try to take out the tower in the show. They go for the cannon, try to destroy the cannon so they can land more gunships in the battle area. So I wanted to make sure to capture as much as I could. So if you did watch the show, you kind of recognize, oh, here's some of these characters, and they're kind of doing the same objectives or missions that they do in the actual show.
And you built this obviously based on the show. So as you're looking at the scene and kind of trying to capture that with Lego, how difficult is that for you to bring it into the Lego world? And are there some creative liberties you had to take there? How does that work?
Yep. So the old show is in 2D animation form, which is a great style, but makes it hard to transform into Lego. There's not much detail. It's very kind of just flat colors. So like the Mason area, I decided to add those in there to give it some interesting texture, lots of studs, left some sticking out to make sure that it wasn't just flat buildings. I really wanted to capture some different textures to make the buildings unique. So there were definitely some creative liberties in terms of how am I going to transform this from a 2D animated show into Lego form?
One of the things that makes it so impressive is just the whole size. Do you know how long this whole build is?
Yeah, I think it's around 8 feet, so largest mock I've done, but yeah.
And you also build it up a little bit off the table, so that allowed you to get some kind of underground areas. What's that structure like underneath there?
Yep, so just a bunch of 16 by 16 plates and then a bunch of filler brick columns underneath. That way I can do the kind of sewage tunnel down there with a few clones and then a couple of trenches in the battlefield, because every build I do I like to have trenches and throw back to World War I and World War II style mocks. So.
No, I love it. That's fantastic. So obviously with an 8-foot build like this, there's a lot to set up. What was transporting this and kind of setting up at the show like?
A little difficult. We did have a couple buildings fall down, so I spent the past few days repairing those, but overall not too bad. I've built it up on some wooden pallets so you can carry it underneath just to support the weight, and you can kind of slide them onto the table, and then some of the buildings will come apart, some of the roofs, and like the tower and a few other things, and then wrapping them in saran wrap to make sure that if anything does fall out, they're all kind of in the same area, and then spend the past couple days just rebuilding it, getting it ready for the convention.
It looks fantastic. Do you know how many minifigures are in the whole build here?
I don't. There's probably over 50 minifigures at least. So I had a couple awesome people here at the convention and online send me some figures and lend me some figures to use to make sure the mock had lots of life and action set pieces in it. So.
Are some of these custom third-party ones or standard Lego? How does that kind of mix in?
Yeah, pretty much all of them are Lego, either the 2013 clones or 2018 or the new 2022 clones. Droids, just normal battle droids, and then a couple Clone Army customs and a few AV figures that I had Droid Bait on Instagram make for me. So huge shout out to him, but mostly just official Lego stuff with a few custom minifigures here and there.
Well, fantastic work with this whole layout here, and I'm sure you have a lot of public coming by recognizing different scenes, able to point stuff out.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, it's awesome. Just the show was a big part of my childhood and a lot of other people's childhood, so anything to honor that awesome show is a pleasure.
There you go. Well, thanks so much for taking us through the layout, and keep up the great work.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.